The phone buzzed with another notification. Another view, another share. Marcus stared at the screen in disbelief as the number climbed. 50,000. 75,000. 100,000 views. Karen's triumphant face filled his phone as she pointed at what she claimed was her property line. But Marcus knew something she didn't. Hidden in his garage sat a manila envelope that would destroy everything she'd built her case on. The fake survey she'd shown the police? He had the real one. And tomorrow, when the city council met to decide his fate, Karen Williams was about to learn that some battles aren't won by the loudest voice, they're won by the person who holds the truth. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Marcus Chen's backyard as he knelt beside his above-ground pool, disconnecting the final pump hose. 3 years he'd owned this house. 3 years of peaceful summers, of his daughter Lily splashing in the water while he grilled burgers on weekends. 3 years of what he'd thought was a quiet suburban life. He should have known it wouldn't last. Daddy, why do we have to take down the pool? Lily's voice carried the kind of devastating innocence that could break a grown man's heart. At 7 years old, she didn't understand property disputes or bitter neighbors. She only knew that her favorite part of summer was disappearing. Marcus looked up from the pool equipment, his hands still dripping with chlorinated water. Lily stood on their small deck, her brown hair catching the golden light, wearing the mermaid swimsuit she'd begged for last month. The one she'd planned to wear every day until school started. It's complicated, sweetheart, he said, forcing his voice to stay steady. Sometimes grown-ups have disagreements because of the mean lady next door. Marcus's jaw tightened. Even a 7-year-old could see what Karen Williams really was. Mrs. Williams thinks the pool is too close to her fence, he explained, though the words tasted bitter. Too close to her fence. The fence that had been there when he bought the house. The pool that had been installed with proper permits, measured and remeasured to comply with every city ordinance. But it's our yard, Lily said, and the simple truth of it hit him like a punch to the chest. I know, baby. I know. The sound of a sliding glass door opening made Marcus's shoulders tense. He didn't need to look to know that Karen Williams had emerged onto her deck, probably with that damn phone of hers ready to record another violation to add to her growing collection. Karen Williams was 53 years old, though she worked hard to look 43, with professionally highlighted blonde hair and yoga outfits that probably cost more than Marcus's monthly utilities. She'd moved in 18 months ago, and within a week, the Homeowners Association complaints had started. The pool was an eyesore. The fence needed repair. His lawn wasn't the right shade of green. But this was different. This was war. Oh good, Karen's voice carried across the 5 feet that separated their decks, syrupy sweet with false concern. I see you're finally doing the right thing. Marcus didn't respond. He focused on coiling the hose, on the mechanical precision of taking apart something that had brought his family joy. If he looked at her, if he engaged, this would escalate into another screaming match that would end with the police being called and another black mark against his name in the neighborhood. Facebook group. You know, Karen continued, apparently interpreting his silence as an invitation to monologue, I really didn't want it to come to this. I tried to be neighborly. I tried to explain the situation quietly. That was Rich. Her version of quiet had involved calling the city code enforcement office 6 times in 2 weeks, posting photos of his pool on 3 different social media platforms with captions about property line violations, and organizing a petition among the neighbors to have it removed. But when someone refuses to listen to reason, Karen's voice trailed off with the kind of dramatic pause that suggested she was probably filming this for her TikTok followers. The account that had somehow gained 12,000 followers in the past month, all of them apparently fascinated by her crusade against suburban property disputes. Marcus stood up, his back protesting after an hour of crouching beside the pool. The water level had dropped significantly since he'd started draining it this morning. By tomorrow, it would be empty. By the weekend, the pool would be disassembled and stored in his garage, and Lily would spend the rest of her summer staring at the empty patch of grass where her happiness used to be. The property survey clearly shows, Karen started. The property survey shows that my pool is 18 inches from the property line, Marcus interrupted, his voice carefully controlled. City ordinance requires 12 inches. I'm in full compliance. Your survey is wrong. My survey is from the county assessor's office. Well, mine is from a licensed surveyor. Marcus finally turned to look at her. Karen stood at the edge of her deck, phone held high, recording their conversation. She wore white capri pants and a pink blouse that probably cost more than his monthly car payment. Her expression was the kind of smug satisfaction that suggested she believed she'd already won. "You had a survey done?" Marcus asked. "Of course I did. I'm not some amateur who just trusts government paperwork." Karen lowered her phone slightly, apparently pleased that she'd finally provoked a response. "A real survey, by a real professional. And it clearly shows that your pool is 3 feet onto my property." 3 feet. Marcus almost laughed. If his pool were 3 feet onto her property, it would be sitting in her flower bed. "I'd like to see that survey," he said. "Oh, you will. The city council will see it too, at next week's hearing." Karen's smile was razor-sharp. "Along with all the video evidence I've collected of you ignoring repeated requests to address this violation." Video evidence. Marcus glanced at the phone in her hand, then at the security camera she'd installed on her deck last month, positioned to capture a perfect view of his backyard. How many hours of footage did she have? How many private family moments had she recorded and catalogued for her war chest? "Daddy." Lily's small voice cut through the tension. "Can we still have pool parties when we move?" Move. The word hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. Marcus hadn't said anything about moving. Hadn't even seriously considered it until this moment. But looking at Karen's triumphant expression, at the camera recording his family's distress, at the empty shell of what used to be their sanctuary, the thought crystallized into something approaching certainty. "Maybe, sweetheart," he said softly. "Maybe we can find a place with an even bigger pool." Karen's smile faltered slightly. "Well, that's a big decision to make over a simple property dispute." Simple. Marcus felt something shift inside him, like a dam developing its first crack. "You filed 17 complaints against me in 6 weeks. You've turned my address into content for your social media. You've organized my neighbors against me. There's nothing simple about what you've done. I've documented violations of city code and homeowners association guidelines," Karen said, her voice taking on the rehearsed quality of someone who'd practiced this speech. "As is my right as a concerned citizen and property owner. And it's my right to live peacefully in my own home." "Then you should have thought about that before you installed an illegal structure." The crack in the dam widened. "It's not illegal. According to my survey, your survey is bullshit." The word hung between them like a slap. Karen's mouth opened in shock, then snapped shut. Her phone came back up, and Marcus realized she was probably live-streaming this conversation to her growing audience of suburban vigilantes. "Did you just—" Karen sputtered. "Did you just use profanity at me? In front of your daughter?" Marcus glanced at Lily, who was staring at him with wide eyes. He'd never sworn in front of her before. Hell, he rarely swore at all. But something about Karen Williams brought out the worst in him, stripped away the careful politeness he'd maintained for 18 months of escalating harassment. "I said your survey is incorrect," he amended, though they both knew what he'd actually said. "I heard what you said. My followers heard what you said." Karen's voice was rising, taking on the shrill quality that had become familiar to half the neighborhood. "And the city council will hear what you said when I play this recording at the hearing." "Mom, is everything okay?" A new voice joined the conversation. Tyler Williams, Karen's 17-year-old son, had appeared on their deck. He was tall and lanky, with his mother's blonde hair and his father's uncomfortable expression. Marcus had actually liked the kid during their brief interactions. Tyler had helped him carry groceries once when Marcus's back was acting up, and he always waved politely when they passed on the street. "Everything's fine, honey," Karen said, though her voice suggested everything was decidedly not fine. Mr. Chen was just expressing his feelings about the legal action. Tyler looked from his mother to Marcus, and Marcus saw something in the kid's eyes that looked like embarrassment. Or maybe guilt. "Maybe we should go inside," Tyler suggested quietly. "I'm documenting a violation," Karen snapped. "Mr. Chen is removing an illegal structure, and I want it on record that, Mom." Tyler's voice was firmer now. "Come inside." For a moment, Karen looked like she might argue with her son the way she argued with everyone else. But something in Tyler's expression made her pause. She Marcus didn't sleep that night. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle around him, thinking about the manila envelope on his kitchen counter and the choice it represented. At 3 a.m., he gave up on sleep entirely and padded downstairs to his home office. The room was small, cramped with the detritus of a life that had been simple until 18 months ago. Bills stacked on the desk. Lily's artwork taped to the walls. A framed photo of his late wife Sarah, taken the summer before the cancer diagnosis that had changed everything. Sarah would have known what to do. She'd always been the fighter in their relationship, the one who read every contract twice and never backed down from a principle. Marcus was the peacekeeper, the one who preferred compromise to conflict. But Sarah wasn't here, and Lily was depending on him to be both parents now. He opened his laptop and typed Karen Williams Surveyor into the search bar. The first result was her TikTok account at Neighborhood Watch Karen. 127,000 followers now. The numbers had tripled since yesterday. Her latest video, posted 2 hours ago, showed Marcus taking down the pool with the caption, "Victory." Entitled neighbor finally removes illegal pool after months of fighting. Swimmer hashtag #crossmark sometimes you have to stand up for what's right. Hashtag property rights hashtag neighbor from hell hashtag justice. The comments were brutal. Hundreds of people calling him everything. From selfish to words he wouldn't repeat in front of his daughter. People who knew nothing about him or his situation, passing judgment based on Karen's carefully curated narrative. But buried in the comments, one caught his attention. Wait, didn't she say last week that the pool was 3 feet on her property? In this video, it looks like it's barely close to the fence. Something doesn't add up. Marcus screenshot the comment before it could be deleted. He clicked through to Karen's earlier videos, studying them with the focus of a detective examining evidence. There was last week's tour of her backyard, where she dramatically gestured at the pool and declared it clearly on my property. There was the video from 2 weeks ago where she'd measured the distance with a tape measure, though the angle made it impossible to see the actual numbers. And there, posted 3 weeks ago, was the video that made his blood run cold. Karen stood in her backyard, holding a rolled-up document. "So I finally got the official survey done," she announced to her phone camera. "And just as I suspected, that eyesore of a pool is 3 feet onto my property. 3 feet. Can you believe the audacity?" She unrolled the document, but the camera angle was too high to see the details. All Marcus could make out was a letterhead and what looked like a hand-drawn property line. The survey company was Johnson and Associates, Karen continued. Real professionals, not like some people who think they can just guess where property lines are. Johnson and Associates. Marcus wrote the name down. At 6 a.m., he called in sick to work for the first time in 2 years. At 8 a.m., he was on the phone with Johnson and Associates. "I'm calling about a recent survey you did on Maple Street," Marcus told the receptionist. "For Karen Williams." "One moment, please." The hold music was interrupted after 30 seconds. "I'm sorry, sir, but we don't have any record of surveying a property for Karen Williams. Are you sure you have the right company?" Marcus's heart rate spiked. "Could you double-check? It would have been within the last month. 428 Maple Street." "I've checked our system thoroughly, sir. We haven't done any work on Maple Street in over a year." Marcus thanked her and hung up, staring at the name he'd written down. Johnson and Associates. The company Karen had specifically named in her video. The company that had no record of surveying her property. He tried calling 3 other surveying companies in the area. None of them had worked with Karen Williams. By 10 a.m., Marcus was sitting in his car outside the county assessor's office, the manila envelope in his lap. Inside the building, he found the records department and explained what he needed to a clerk who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. "Property surveys are public record," she said, typing his address into her computer. "Here we go. Your property was last surveyed in 2019 when you purchased it. Before that, 2003 when the previous owner built the addition. What about 428 Maple Street?" Marcus asked. "My neighbor's property." More typing. "Same thing. Last surveyed in 2023 when she purchased it. Before that, 2015. Has anyone requested survey information for either property recently?" The clerk shrugged. "I can't tell you who's accessed records, but I can tell you that no new surveys have been filed for either property." Marcus felt the pieces clicking into place. Karen claimed to have a recent survey, but no surveying company had done the work, and no new survey had been filed with the county. Which meant, could I get copies of the official surveys for both properties? He asked. 20 minutes later, Marcus sat in his car studying two official documents. His property survey, which he'd seen before, clearly showed his pool was well within the legal setback requirements, and Karen's property survey, which showed her lot ending exactly where he'd always thought it did, confirming that his pool was on his own property with room to spare. There was no grey area, no disputed measurement. Karen Williams had lied about everything. But why? What did she gain from destroying his family's peace of mind? From turning him into a pariah in his own neighborhood? Marcus drove home and spent the next 2 hours going through every video on Karen's TikTok account. The content was a masterclass in manipulation. She presented herself as a reasonable homeowner being tormented by a difficult neighbor. She showed selective footage that supported her narrative while carefully avoiding angles that would reveal the truth. She had turned his private family life into public entertainment. And it was working. Her follower count was climbing by the hour. Brands were starting to sponsor her content. In the comments, people were asking her to write a book about dealing with difficult neighbors. She had monetized his misery. The realization hit him like a physical blow. This wasn't about property lines or pool placement. This was about content creation. Karen had turned his family into unwilling characters in her social media drama because conflict drove engagement, and engagement drove revenue. At noon, his phone rang. The caller ID showed the city planning office. Mr. Chen, this is Janet Morrison from Code Enforcement. I wanted to follow up on the complaint we received about your pool installation. Marcus's stomach dropped. I thought that was resolved. I'm taking down the pool. Well, that's actually why I'm calling. We received some additional documentation this morning that we need to review. Could you come in this afternoon to discuss it? What kind of documentation? A property survey submitted by your neighbor. There seem to be some discrepancies with our records that we need to clarify. Marcus closed his eyes. Karen wasn't content to win quietly. She was going to push this all the way to official sanctions, probably so she could film his humiliation. For her followers. I'll be there at 2, he said. The city planning office was housed in a converted strip mall that had seen better days. Janet Morrison turned out to be a tired-looking woman in her 50s who seemed genuinely puzzled by the situation. I've been doing this job for 12 years, she said, spreading documents across a desk. And I've never seen anything quite like this. She showed him Karen's survey, a professional-looking document that claimed to be from Precision Property Surveys LLC. According to this survey, Marcus's pool was indeed 3 feet onto Karen's property. The problem is, Janet continued, this survey contradicts our county records. And when I called Precision Property Surveys to verify the work, the number was disconnected. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. Disconnected. The company doesn't exist, Mr. Chen. At least not anywhere we can find. No business license, no professional certification, nothing. Janet pulled out another document, the official county survey that Marcus had gotten copies of that morning. According to our records, your pool is in full compliance with setback requirements. It's 18 inches from the property line, which exceeds the 12-inch minimum. She looked up at him with something that might have been sympathy. Someone has submitted a fraudulent survey to my office, Mr. Chen. That's not just a civil matter, it's a criminal offense. The room seemed to tilt slightly. Criminal. Filing false documents with a government agency is a felony. If someone created a fake survey and submitted it as evidence in an official proceeding. Janet shook her head. That's document fraud, obstruction of justice, and potentially extortion if they were trying to force you to take action based on false information. Marcus thought about the video evidence Karen had been collecting, the social media campaign, the pressure that had forced him to drain his daughter's pool. What happens now? He asked. Now I have to file a report with the police. This is beyond my jurisdiction. Janet began collecting the documents. In the meantime, you're not required to remove your pool. In fact, I'd recommend you don't make any changes to your property until this investigation is complete. Marcus drove home in a daze, his mind reeling with the implications. Karen hadn't just lied, she had committed multiple felonies. And she had documented much of it on social media, creating a digital trail of evidence that would be impossible to deny. As he pulled into his driveway, he saw Karen working in her front yard, dead. The police arrived at Karen's house at 7:23 a.m. on Friday morning. Marcus was in his kitchen making Lily's breakfast when he saw the two officers walking up Karen's front path, their bodies casting long shadows in the early morning light. Detective Sarah Rodriguez and Officer Mike Thompson. He'd learned their names from the business cards they'd left with him the day before after taking his statement. Lily was eating cereal at the kitchen table, swinging her legs and humming a song from her favorite cartoon. She didn't notice the drama unfolding next door, didn't see Karen open her front door in a bathrobe with her hair uncombed and her face pale with what Marcus could only assume was a sleepless night. He found himself holding his breath as Detective Rodriguez showed Karen her badge. Even from this distance, he could see Karen's shoulders slump with defeat. The confident neighborhood watchdog who had terrorized his family for months looked small and fragile in her doorway. "Daddy, can we fill the pool today?" Lily asked, not looking up from her cereal. "Maybe this weekend, sweetheart," Marcus said, unable to tear his eyes away from the scene next door. The conversation on Karen's porch lasted 15 minutes. Marcus watched Karen gesture frantically, her hands moving in the animated way of someone trying to explain away the unexplainable. He saw Detective Rodriguez shake her head several times, saw Officer Thompson take notes on a small pad. Finally, Karen stepped back into her house and returned with what looked like a laptop bag. She handed it to Detective Rodriguez, then covered her face with her hands. Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Please don't let them arrest me in front of my son." He stared at the message, then looked next door where Karen was standing in her doorway, her phone in her hand, looking directly at his kitchen window. Even from this distance, he could see she was crying. A dozen responses ran through his mind. Reminders of how she'd humiliated his family on social media. Pointed questions about whether she'd considered Lily's feelings when she'd turned their private life into public entertainment. A simple declaration that she'd brought this on herself. Instead, he found himself thinking about Tyler Williams, the 17-year-old who had tried to pull his mother back from the brink yesterday. The kid who had helped him carry groceries once, who had seemed embarrassed by his mother's behavior from the beginning. Marcus looked at Lily, still humming over her cereal, blissfully unaware that her daddy was deciding whether to show mercy to the person who had tried to destroy their happiness. He typed back, "Tell them you'll come to the station voluntarily." His phone buzzed again immediately. "Thank you." 5 minutes later, Marcus watched Karen Williams walk to her car escorted by 2 police officers. She wasn't in handcuffs, but her head was down and her movements had the defeated shuffle of someone who knew their carefully constructed world was collapsing. Detective Rodriguez caught Marcus's eye through the kitchen window and gave him a small nod before getting into her patrol car. It was over. Or at least, this part was over. "Daddy, you're staring out the window," Lily observed. "Sorry, baby. Just thinking about the pool." Among other things. The rest of Friday passed in a strange calm. Marcus worked from home, fielding emails and conference calls while keeping one eye on Karen's house. A few neighbors walked by during the day, their pace slowing as they passed the Williams residence. By evening, the neighborhood Facebook group was buzzing with speculation about the police visit. Marcus ignored the social media chatter. He had no desire to become the neighborhood gossip or to turn his vindication into entertainment for others. Karen had taught him exactly what that looked like, and he wanted no part of it. At 6 p.m., Tyler Williams knocked on his front door. The kid looked exhausted, his blonde hair disheveled and dark circles under his eyes. He was still tall and lanky, but something in his posture made him seem smaller than usual. "Mr. Chen, could I talk to you for a minute?" Marcus stepped onto his front porch and closed the door behind him. "How are you holding up, Tyler?" "Not great." Tyler's voice was hoarse, like he'd been crying or shouting or both. "My mom's at the police station. Her lawyer says she'll probably be released tonight, but..." He trailed off, staring at his feet. But everything's fucked." Tyler looked up sharply. "Sorry, everything's messed up. The house, the family, all of it." Marcus waited. Sometimes the best thing you could do for someone was give them space to find their words. "I tried to stop her," Tyler said finally. When she started making those videos, when she got obsessed with your pool, I tried to tell her she was going too far. But she wouldn't listen. She said I didn't understand, that she was standing up for our property rights, that she was helping the whole neighborhood. It's not your fault, Tyler. Isn't it? I knew she was lying about the survey. I mean, I didn't know she made it up, but I knew something was wrong. She never showed me any paperwork, never talked about meeting with surveyors. And when I asked her about it, Tyler shook his head. She said it was none of my business, that adults were handling adult problems. Marcus felt a familiar stab of anger at Karen, but it was different now. Not the helpless rage of being falsely accused, but something colder. The fury of realizing that Karen's lies had hurt her own son as much as they'd hurt his family. She turned our whole life into content, Tyler continued. Do you know how weird it is to have your mom become TikTok famous for harassing the neighbors? Kids at school started following her account. They'd come up to me and ask about the pool drama, like it was some kind of reality show. That must have been awful. The worst part was that I started to believe her. Not completely, but she was so confident, you know? She had all these videos, all these followers telling her she was right. And I thought, maybe Mr. Chen really is the problem. Maybe his pool really is on our property and I just can't see it. Tyler's voice cracked slightly. I'm sorry, Mr. Chen. I'm sorry I didn't stand up to her sooner. I'm sorry my mom did this to your family. Marcus studied the kid's face, 17 years old and carrying the weight of his mother's crimes on his shoulders. It wasn't fair. None of this was fair. Tyler, you're not responsible for your mother's choices. You know that, right? I could have stopped her. No, you couldn't have. Trust me, I tried to stop her too. She was determined to see this through. They stood in silence for a moment, two people who had been caught in Karen Williams' wake, trying to figure out what came next. What's going to happen to her? Tyler asked. Marcus had spent the afternoon researching document fraud and related charges. The answer wasn't encouraging. I honestly don't know, he said. The charges are serious. Filing false documents with a government agency, fraud, possibly extortion. She could be looking at jail time. Tyler's face went white. Jail? Probably not a long sentence, especially if this is her first offense. But yeah, it's possible. What about? I mean, could you? Tyler struggled with the words. Could you ask them not to press charges? The question Marcus had been dreading. He'd known it was coming from the moment he saw Karen's text message that morning, from the moment he decided to show her mercy by suggesting she turn herself involuntarily. It's not really up to me anymore, Marcus said gently. The state is prosecuting her for filing false documents with the city. Even if I wanted to drop everything, the criminal charges would still stand. Tyler nodded, but Marcus could see the hope dying in his eyes. However, Marcus continued, there might be civil charges I could file. Harassment, defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress. Those would be separate from the criminal case, and those I do have control over. You haven't filed them yet. No. Why not? It was a good question. Marcus looked at his house, at the kitchen window where Lily was probably finishing her dinner, at the backyard where his empty pool sat waiting to be refilled. Because I'm not sure what good it would do, he said finally. Your mom made a mistake. A big mistake, with serious consequences. But destroying her life won't undo the damage she did to mine. Tyler stared at him with an expression that was equal parts gratitude and disbelief. There is one thing I want, though, Marcus added. Anything. I want her to apologize. Publicly. Not some generic social media post about misunderstandings. Or learning experiences. A real apology that takes responsibility for what she did. She'll do it, Tyler said immediately. I'll make sure she does it. And I want her to donate the money she made from those videos to a local charity. All of it. Tyler nodded eagerly. Done. What else? That's it. Tyler blinked. That's it. An apology and charity donation. That's it. But she put your family through hell. She committed crimes. She could have ruined your life. Marcus thought about that. Karen could have ruined his life, if he'd let her. If he'd been the kind of person who collapsed under pressure, who ran from conflict, who prioritized peace over principle. But Sarah had raised him better than that, and Lily deserved better than that. She tried, Marcus said. But she didn't succeed. My family is fine. My pool is going back up. My daughter will have her summer back. Sometimes the best revenge is just living well. Tyler was quiet for a long moment, processing this grace he clearly hadn't expected. Mr. Chen, can I ask you something? Sure. Why are you being so nice to us? After 3 weeks later, Marcus stood in his backyard watching Lily cannonball into the refilled pool, her delighted shriek echoing off the fence that had once been the center of so much conflict. The water sparkled in the afternoon sun, and for the first time since Karen Williams had moved in next door, his home felt like a sanctuary again. The criminal case had moved swiftly. Karen pled guilty to filing false documents and received 2 years probation, 200 hours of community service, and a $5,000 fine. The judge had been particularly harsh about the social media component, calling it a disturbing example of how online validation can drive people to commit serious crimes. Karen's house had been quiet since she returned from her court appearance. No more videos, no more dramatic confrontations across the fence line. Tyler had told him she was seeing a therapist twice a week and working part-time at a local nonprofit, part of her community service requirement. Daddy, watch this. Lily called out, preparing for another jump. Marcus applauded as his daughter executed what she proudly called her mermaid dive, a belly flop that sent water cascading across the pool deck. The sound of her laughter was better than any victory speech, more satisfying than any apology video. His phone buzzed. A text from Detective Rodriguez. Thought you'd want to know. We found something interesting while executing the search warrant. On Ms. Williams' devices. Marcus frowned and called her back. What did you find? Financial records, Rodriguez said. Turns out this wasn't her first rodeo with manufactured drama. We found evidence that she orchestrated similar conflicts with neighbors at her previous address in Phoenix. Different issues, noise complaints, fence disputes, HOA violations, but the same pattern. Create conflict, document it obsessively. Monetize the content. Marcus felt his stomach drop. She's done this before. Multiple times. The difference is, those neighbors backed down or moved away before things escalated to criminal charges. You're the first one who fought back hard. Enough to expose the fraud. The implications hit him like a physical blow. Karen hadn't stumbled into this situation through poor judgment or social media addiction. She was a predator who had systematically targeted families for content creation. His family wasn't her first victim. They were just the first one strong. Enough to survive her tactics. How many families? He asked. At least 3 that we can document. Probably more. Rodriguez paused. The Phoenix DA is very interested in our findings. They're reopening investigations into complaints she filed there. After hanging up, Marcus sat on his pool deck watching Lily swim, his mind reeling with this. New information. All those weeks of self-doubt, of wondering if he was overreacting, of questioning whether he was being unreasonable. Meanwhile, Karen had been executing a practiced routine she'd perfected on other victims. Mr. Chen. Marcus looked up to see Tyler Williams standing at the gate between their backyards, his expression uncertain. Hey, Tyler. Come on in. The kid looked older than his 17 years, worn down by the weight of his mother's actions and their consequences. He approached hesitantly, as if unsure whether Marcus's mercy extended to casual neighborly interaction. I wanted to thank you again, Tyler said, for not pursuing the civil charges. Mom's lawyer said that could have cost us the house. Marcus studied Tyler's face. The kid didn't know about the new developments, about the other families his mother had victimized. He was still processing his mother as someone who had made one terrible mistake, not as a serial predator who had turned harassment into a business model. How is she doing? Marcus asked carefully. Better, I think. The therapy is helping. She cries a lot, which is weird because I've never really seen her cry before. But she's also, I don't know how to explain it, more like herself, like the person she was before she got obsessed with social media and neighborhood drama. Tyler sat down on the edge of the pool deck, watching Lily practice underwater handstands. She wants to apologize to you in person, he continued. Not for a video or anything like that. Just to say she's sorry. Face to face. Marcus considered this. The police had found evidence of other victims, other families destroyed by Karens, manufactured conflicts. But Tyler didn't know that yet, and when he found out, it would shatter whatever progress his mother had made toward redemption. I don't think that's a good idea right now, Marcus said gently. Because you don't forgive her. Because I think she needs to focus on getting better, not on making herself feel less guilty. Tyler nodded, though he looked disappointed. She's been having nightmares. About prison, about losing the house, about what people think of her. But mostly about what she did to your family. She watches your daughter play in the pool sometimes, through the kitchen window, and she just breaks down. The image was both satisfying and disturbing. Marcus had wanted Karen to face consequences for her actions, but he took no pleasure in the idea of her psychological torment, especially knowing that Tyler was witnessing his mother's breakdown firsthand. Tyler, can I ask you something? Sure. Did your mom ever talk about problems with neighbors at your old house in Phoenix? Tyler's expression shifted, confusion giving way to something that looked like recognition. How did you know we lived in Phoenix? The police investigation turned up some information about her past. What kind of information? Marcus hesitated. He didn't want to be the one to destroy whatever relationship Tyler was rebuilding with. His mother. But the kid deserved to know the truth, and he deserved to hear it from someone who cared about his well-being rather than from a prosecutor's office. Tyler, there were other neighbors, other conflicts that followed the same pattern as what happened with us. The color drained from Tyler's face. Other neighbors. At least 3 families that the police have documented. Your mom created conflicts with them, documented the drama, and monetized the content. When the neighbors backed down or moved away, she found new targets. Tyler stared at him for a long moment, processing this information. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. Mrs. Rodriguez, the family next door to us in Phoenix. Mom had this huge fight with them about their dog barking. She said it was keeping her awake, that they were being inconsiderate. She made all these videos about it, got thousands of followers. The Rodriguezes ended up moving away. What happened after they moved? Nothing. The new neighbors had a dog too, even louder than the Rodriguez's dog. But Mom never complained about them. She said the new dog had a different bark that didn't bother her as much. Tyler's voice was getting stronger, but there was a horror in it that made Marcus's chest ache. She was lying about the whole thing, wasn't she? I'm sorry, Tyler. And the Johnsons, the family across the street. Mom got into this massive dispute with them about their Christmas decorations. Said they were violating HOA rules, that their lights were too bright. She documented everything, made it into this whole crusade about property values and neighborhood standards. Tyler was talking faster now, pieces clicking into place. But after they took down their decorations, she started complaining about the family 2 streets over. Said their decorations were even worse, but she never did anything about it. Never. Made videos, never filed complaints. It was only drama when it was convenient for her content. Marcus watched the realization destroy whatever peace Tyler had made with his mother's actions. This wasn't a good person who had made bad choices. This was someone who had systematically victimized families for profit, and Tyler was old enough to understand the implications. I'm sorry, Marcus said again. I know this is hard to hear. Is she going to jail? For the other stuff? I don't know. The Phoenix DA is looking into it, but those cases are older and might be harder to prosecute. Tyler was quiet for a long time, watching Lily swim laps in the pool. When he finally spoke, his voice was flat and emotionless. I defended her. When the Rodriguez family was packing up their moving truck, Mrs. Rodriguez tried to talk to me. She said my mom was a liar, that she was making their lives hell for no reason. And I told her she was wrong. I told her my mom was just standing up for the neighborhood. You were a kid protecting your parent. That's normal. I was 15, old enough to see what was happening, old enough to question why every place we lived turned into some kind of war zone. Tyler's hands were shaking slightly. She destroyed those families' lives, and I helped her do it by believing her lies. Marcus moved closer to Tyler, recognizing the signs of someone whose worldview was collapsing in real time. Tyler, listen to me. You are not responsible for your mother's choices. You were a minor living in her house, dependent on her for everything. There was no scenario where you could have stopped her, even if you'd realized what she was doing. But I could have warned you. When she started making videos about your pool, I could have told you about Phoenix, about the pattern. Maybe you could have stopped her before she committed crimes. Maybe. Or maybe she would have just gotten better at hiding what she was doing. Either way, that's not on you. Lily climbed out of the pool and ran over to them, dripping water and radiating the kind of uncomplicated joy that only 7-year-olds could achieve. Tyler, do you want to see my underwater handstand? Tyler managed to smile for her, though Marcus could see the effort it took. Sure, Lily. Show me what.